Yep.
Okay, this is the Hampton Lakes Planning Board, April 16, 2024. Following is the agenda for the regular meeting of the Hampton Lakes Planning Board. Meeting is held in the municipal building, April 16, 2024, beginning at 7:30. Formal written advance notice is required by NJSA 10:4-1 et sec. Has been provided to this meeting at least 48 hours in advance of today, giving the time, date, and location, and to the extent known at the time, the agenda of this meeting. Such notice stated that formal action may or may not be taken. This meeting will be video recorded and will be rebroadcast for later viewing for the public. The notice was posted on the bulletin board outside of the offices of the municipal clerk, reserved for this and other similar announcements. Provided to the Suburban Trends, the newspaper designated by the council and the planning board to receive such notices, and filed with the borough clerk. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For tonight's meeting, we need a roll call first.
Okay, Mr. Simone,
Here.
Mr. Fracaro,
Here.
Mr. Trost,
Here.
Ms. Michael. Here. Mr. Otto,
Here.
Dr. Pendexter, Mr. Keating,
Here.
Mr. Bulby,
Here.
Mayor Sarah,
Here.
Councilman Venon,
Here.
and we have Andy Brewer and Carl. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, first two items on the agenda are regular meeting minutes. The first is from February 20, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and if so, what is your pleasure? Anyone? Okay, motion by Mayor Sarah. And a second? Joseph? Oh, Emery, okay. Any discussion on the minutes from February 20, 2024? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes of February 2025, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And present. Okay. Second one is regular meeting minutes from March 19, 2024. And what is your pleasure on that one?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Carol and Trost. What?
It was, Keaton.
Oh, Keating? Okay.
It was somebody down that end,
It was
sorry.
me.
Okay. Any discussion on the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, just on page number 2, the third bullet, I know it's small, but it's access to or through Ivy Street, bullet number 3. I didn't know if that meant like through street or is that to, might be just page 2. Page 2, bullet 3.
Access to
Near the bottom.
through Ivy Street, traffic movement for a better flow.
Right.
Just should be through, I think.
Okay.
Where? I'm sorry.
Third bullet on page
Near
2.
the bottom, third bullet.
Access through Ivy Street.
To Ivy Street, because I didn't know if that meant like a through street or... To, okay.
Two.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Any other corrections or comments? And if so, as changed from access to through to just access to Ivy Street. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any present? Okay. Under correspondence. Under correspondence, we have municipal notice for the planning board coming from the borough, a memo from Liz Bransons, the municipal clerk, notice regarding financial disclosure statements, filing information mandatory, filing by all members of the board, has to be into the town and the state by April 30th. So please make sure that you all file that disclosure notice. And the instructions on that we're giving in your packets. All right. For the general public, we have an application tonight that I'm sure you're here for, and we have a continuation of a hearing that was first held on February 20. So the notice requirements were continued to this meeting. No additional notices were required since it was announced both at the February and the March meeting. Mr. Whitaker, you have a presentation and continuation of the project.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Bruce Whitaker from the firm of McDonald Whitaker, representing the applicant. As you stated, this is a continuation of the hearing that was held on February 20th of 2024 before this board. We made our presentation that evening, and we presented our engineer who reviewed the site plan requests being made and the modifications being made to the site. The engineer testified as to the variances that we were requesting from a site plan perspective. We had a second engineer here, if you recall, from Sycia Engineering. They are the manufacturers of the wall that is being proposed to be installed there, and they spoke and testified as to the structural integrity of the wall and as it pertains to the procedures that would be employed if this board were to grant approval as it pertains to the construction of that wall. That evening, we set forth a series of conditions. I know a little bit of time's gone by, so just to place them on the record very briefly, we made the stipulations that an operation and maintenance manual would be recorded with the deed if this were approved. Maintenance reports are to be submitted once a year, every December 1st. We would have photometric calculations to be reviewed by the borough engineer, and vibration monitor to be used when installation begins and results provided to your engineer. We have confirmation that there would be four EV stations shown on a revised plan, and we have a revised plan that's going to provide for final grading to the wall with a chain link fence above the wall. With that said, those were the stipulations that we had. You had an exhibit list of February the 20th that ran through 8/13, the last one being a copy of the county approval. Tonight, we would supplement that exhibit list with an 8/14, which will be the revised plans dated April the 4th of 2024. 8/15 being the lighting plan that we will testify to briefly when Mr. Doolittle comes up to testify. And then we reviewed your engineer's letter of April the 3rd, and we provided a response letter to that dated April the 4th. I say we, Mr. Doolittle from his firm of McNally. So that would be A16. And unless there's any questions of me, I would call Mr. Doolittle back. He's still under oath for purposes of testifying as to the revisions that were made to the plan. After that is done, I have a planner here tonight for purposes of testifying as to the basis and foundation for granting the 4 variances that we are requesting pertaining to improved lot coverage, pertaining to disturbance into the slope area, the parking lot setback, and the retaining wall height being greater than 6 feet.
Okay, so just for the record, the documents going back and forth between your engineer and the board's engineer, you said were dated, the latest one was dated the 3rd?
The 4th.
4th?
Our letter
Was
is
the
dated third.
3rd.
The response to everything is dated the 4th.
Okay, and then you have a response to their comments?
So we reviewed the entire package that was submitted, including the point-by-point letter. And it's just to update the board on where the items stand as compared to our letter on the 3rd. If anything's still outstanding, would be a condition of approval. After the presentation is done, I can go through those points. There's not many of them. They go through those points and just surmise it from the engineering standpoint.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that because it's been a back and forth, mostly between the 2 engineers, that we have the right dates and the right responses and that each one's covered. So Carl would be the guy that at the very end of this will have to tell us what's satisfied, what's outstanding.
Right.
Okay?
Agreed.
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you.
You can grab another chair from right over there. You see in the front there? Just lift up the left one. There you go.
Mr. Doolittle, you're still under oath. You testified at the last meeting and testified as to the site plan aspects of this application and the 4 variances being requested, correct?
Yes,
And on the basis of that, you have now prepared a revised plan with a final revision date of April the 4th, 2024?
yes, 2 seats, actually. One is the site plan itself, which is SP2, and the other one is the lighting plan, which is LI1.
So, what I'd like you to do is take us through what the revisions are that are shown on the plan, and you can reference them as you go through.
Yeah, and Carl, you basically highlighted in your letter as well. We just kind of responded to yours.
Correct.
Along with everything we pretty much did, but we'll touch on most of them.
And that's why we did not prepare another letter on top of that. We want to get everything on the testimony, and any responses that slow it up for any particular point, I'll ask from the borough side.
So I think it's probably best if we have Carl's letter from Colliers in front of us, and then Mr. Doolittle's response letter, we can just put it on the record that way. Please proceed.
Yeah, relative to the completeness letter, or relative to the letter from Carl, on page 2, under completeness, we went through the checklist items, and basically a lot of them were either waived or added to the plan. The key map was recommended to be waived, which it was waived. The 200-foot list for the lot 4.01 has now been updated to be lot 4 and 4.01 on the site plan. Item number 3 is all structures within the 200 feet. That should include lot 4, which it now does. Location, species, and size of trees, we requested a waiver for that one. Lot lines with bearings and distances, I think our AutoCAD was shut off at the time, and that now has been taken care of. Areas and dimensions of lot waivers request also, that has been noted and taken care of. The front, side, and rear setbacks have been on and noted. The existing and proposed right-of-way waiver requested, not recommended, that has been now shown on SP2. The scale of 1 inch equal 50 is a waiver request, which we requested, I believe we're at 1 inch equals 20. There's a lot of information on this plan, so that makes it easier to read. The utilities, again, we requested a waiver. The location of underground utilities, intent to serve letter from the utilities, we took a waiver on that one.
That's basically the utilities are in place.
That basically, the site is primarily developed with the exception of the rear portion where we're putting the parking in the wall, yes. Soil erosion and sediment control plan, we had provided one of that's referenced above, and we will go to Passaic County Soils for their approval. Building envelopes was a waiver request because the buildings are basically existing. Statement that all permits or approvals have been obtained. The application was previously granted Passaic County unconditional approval on August 29th, 2019. The Hudson Essex Passaic County Soil Conservation District will receive the prepared soil erosion and sediment control plan. So you should have gotten our letter from the Passaic County Planning Board, okay?
We've provided a construction cost estimate, isn't that correct?
Yes. Let me see where I left off here, unless you want to read off now.
Let's just go to yours.
The course
The deed of easement,
Yep.
we will obviously submit and do that at the time that if this were approved, correct?
By meets and bounds description to be recorded, yes.
Then go into the stormwater aspect.
Stormwater calculations have been revised and submitted. They're quite detailed, but we went through, we just grabbed the copy of them. We went through the standard procedure they're using today. It's basically by DEP, the National Resource Conservation Service puts these standards out. It's basically, we're retaining, I think, a 24-hour storm. And this meets your criteria and the county's, and this has also been approved by the county. Carl, you seem to not have a problem. There were a couple questions, I think, but anything we need to work out between us down the road?
Yeah, overall, we're good with it. As you get through the letter, there's 1 or 2 comments about,
Yep.
invert elevation.
We put, we'll get to that, yeah, so that was all done
I
as
think
well.
that was about it.
Yep.
with the stormwater.
Okay. Retaining wall stability calculations, I think were submitted by Sessi. That's And the geo report was also submitted by Sessi. That covers the completeness. Then to get into your first review comments at the bottom of that page, the zoning table was required, the zoning for the 2018 criteria to be added in, which we put into the zoning table.
So you have three now. You have the required, you have what was previously approved, and now what's proposed.
That's correct. Then 2 was the application at C. We changed a lot of the items on the site plan from just proposed to proposed amended, which reflects a lot of your elevations you talked about, Carl.
Yes, we're good with that.
Okay, and the technical review of the following systems, this is number 3.
So for number 3, it talks about your retention system and the trench drain.
Yep, inverts and trench drains are provided in further testimony, we can do that if need be. They're all on the plan now.
Yeah, I'm all right with it.
Okay.
If we have any questions during construction, that's something that can be worked out in the field during construction if
Yep.
it's approved.
Yep,
It's just the original plan that was provided, it was probably a layer in your AutoCAD that was not depicting that information.
yes, thank you. Item number 4, relative to the drainage design, again, this was approved by the Passaic County Planning Board, and they call what is a failure mode, because this system doesn't have an actual outflow other than retention into the ground. They make us store a substantial amount more water on site, which was also part of the county approval. If the system does back up or clog, it will overflow through the trench drains out by Hamburg Turnpike and go out into the street where they're going right now. So we've really got pretty much a foolproof system with still a backup to drain into the road where it goes today. And that's pretty much what you reiterated as well.
We've already
And that's
stipulated,
stated in your Passaic County letter of unconditional approval.
Right.
correct. We've already stipulated as to the maintenance easement will be provided.
Yep. Number 5 refers to the planning board application. Let's see it today. The maintenance, oh, that's the maintenance easement you just mentioned, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thank you. Number 6 was noted, and we did take care of the dumpster, and we do have adequate cover between the detention system and the footing for the dumpster. We will be responsible if there's any damage to the drainage system as a result of the dumpster being run into.
You've already testified to number 7 as it pertains to the stormwater design and calculation.
Correct, and then that's coupled with the county review letter stating the approval as well. So that letter helps with our comment number 7.
Good.
Mr. Doolittle, you provided the restricted slope plan that was submitted,
Yes,
and have the details of that.
yes.
And then we have, CC Consulting Engineering has provided the additional information they wanted to, that was requested. Moving on to number 10.
One question on item number 9.
Yes,
So on the plan, it shows for an 18-foot max wall height. In the report, it calls for a 21-foot height. Just so that we're clear, this wall's gonna be maxed at 18.
We testified last time as 18, it will be 18, as our site plan indicates.
Perfect, I'm good with
Yep,
that.
okay. What did we do, 10? We're up to 11.
10.
No geotechnical report was given, provided a technical review with the following. Number 10, I believe we had responded.
provided to that.
Yes, we provided to that.
And we stipulate that the test pits will be conducted in the area of the proposed retention system at a later date.
Yep,
Yeah, prior to construction of any stormwater detention system, we're gonna require that a test pit be performed. I wanna make sure that the ground can actually handle the water. As long as it handles the water, then your drainage design works. If for whatever reason the ground, the soil cannot handle the water, then back to the drawing board with some other type of drainage system that meets the requirements.
We stipulate to that. Then the rest of these responses we gave to the rest from number 12 all the way down to 17 or to 16 are basically provided on the plan now as far as the generator pad detail, volumes, et cetera, right?
yep, and the revised lighting.
All right, so let's talk about the revised lighting, which is your other exhibit that we've marked
Yep.
at 815. Just a very brief overview of the revised lighting.
Yeah, we basically had, the lights are now set, I think those wall mounted or building mounted. believe, with the exception of the southeast side. There's two lights out in the parking lot there. But this shows all the light intensities, where you can see the second line around each light. We've added more lights to the property. 8 on the building, there's 2 on the side, and there's 5 in the rear. These are mounted at 12 feet high. The ones in the back will be attached to the wall. And the ones, of course, on the building will be up 12 feet on the building, and then we'll have poles on these 2 on the right-hand side, as you look at it from Hamburg.
So the photometrics of the lighting, is it correct to say that will meet all the ordinance requirements?
Yes.
And there will be no spillage off-site, recognizing this property is basically down in a hole?
Yes, that's correct. And we can also put backflash shields on the sidelines if we need to.
Yeah, we stipulated to that last time.
Okay,
We're gonna do that. And then finally, in connection with the site plan itself, coming back to that, you've shown on the plan now a 4-foot chain link fence at the top of the wall.
That's correct.
And that was the stipulation we made at the last meeting.
Yes.
Other than that, are there any other revisions that were made to the plan?
No, that covers it.
We have nothing further at this point. We'll welcome the comments of your engineer.
Okay, Carl, I have a question, on the drainage. Once the test pits are excavated and you determine that the drainage system is compliant, fine. If you determine that it needs additional, I don't know, additional piping or whatever it needs, that may or may not require coming back to the board. It just depends on whether it's something that's underground and is simply done with piping, but if it affects anything with the site plan, if it creates anything change on the site plan, it's gotta come back here.
Yeah.
That's the stipulation, understood.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, there are times when, I'll use an example, it might not work here for this application, when they dig a test pit and there's all clay soil. And during clay soil, it doesn't allow water to perk into the ground. That's a concern. So there are methods to redo the drainage to make it work, or you might have to relocate it. So for right now, let's say, for example, they dig there and there's clay there. But in a different corner of the site, there's not clay. So it might be relocating the drainage system from one side to the other. As long as it's not impacting everything, it's not a substantial change. That's something that we can work out between engineer and contractor. That's fine, but if it changes the building or the retaining wall or something like that, then yes, I agree, that would have to come back here. That would be a substantial change.
Any above ground impact,
Correct.
I'd wanna see it comes back here. The engineering is fine between the 2 of you, once you're approved and signed off on it, and we're good with that. So I just wanna make sure that that's stipulated in there, which you did.
In addition, Chairman, I would also say, since it's also on the second lot, if for whatever reason this drainage system would have to increase on that second lot and impact it more, I think it would have to come back here.
Yes.
Just to inform the planning board as well.
And we'd have to expand the easement as well.
Correct.
Yeah, so that,
Yeah, so,
Easement is on this property still owned by the client, so that's a good part.
right. But the main thing is to, whatever they work out,
Yeah,
technically, in fact, that applies to a lot on here. A light changes or something, I'm not too concerned about it as long as it continues to meet Carl's approval and doesn't impact the site visual.
Yep.
We've had problems before with sites where people took a little bit of liberty with the site plan and we ended up getting things built that weren't supposed to. And it was like, well, we told you, no, you didn't. So that creates another problem for the building department and the approval, so just want to make sure that's on the record and we're good with that. That's fine, go ahead and proceed.
And then the lighting at 12 feet, keep it at 12.
Yep.
The lights, you're in good shape.
yep.
nothing further then.
Okay, you have nothing else?
I just have the next witness, that's all.
Okay, and Carl, or do you have anything else to add to
They covered-
Mr. Doolittle's?
They basically use my review letter as their template, so I'm satisfied.
Okay.
And you made my
Smart
job
move.
easier.
We appreciate his letter.
Smart move.
Thank you, Carl.
You'll get to that.
There you go, questions.
Okay, go ahead and,
Okay, do you have questions from the public now, or?
no, I'm gonna save the questions to the public to the end, because
Okay.
there's not gonna be a lot more, right?
No, I'm just gonna give you
Planner.
the planner, yes.
Yeah, and just, maybe while Mr. Doolittle's here, if the board has any questions before he steps aside for the minute?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So question again about the stormwater report itself. So your property is kind of unusual because it bears to the left and it goes behind two adjoining properties. One that I think the owner owns as well, and then one that he does not. When obviously there's a rain event, there's a lot of water that comes off that far end side and then does not come onto your property to catch the storm water into the drain, but actually comes between the property that the owner has and the one that he doesn't.
Now it's gonna be parking lot to parking lot at that end with the rock wall going around, which also picks all the water coming off the wall hill, because there's porous stone and a drain at the bottom of that wall underneath. And that also drains all the way around to our retention system, along with all the new pavement that you see dark there. Maybe it's not dark on yours, but that's porous pavement as
This
well.
is the lighting one. Want me to put it back?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that the part that extends far
We're
to the
not
left.
changing any grades beyond our retaining wall. So anything that's flowing that way now will keep coming that way. If it gets into the parking lot, on the lot next to us,
Right,
that'll run down into that corner and it will get into the system.
so it will run down into the corner.
Yeah.
So right now, today, the
Yep.
current, there's a steady water flow.
Right.
That will be, once the
Yep.
retaining wall gets put in, that'll be deterred into
Yep.
your retention. Okay. So now, on the right-hand side of your building, you have, I'll call it for lack of a better term, floor drain before it comes
Yes.
to the street.
Yes.
Should there be one then on the other side?
There's one on each side.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They actually go across the front. They come down on the right-hand side.
Okay,
There's this one there, there's a couple little clean outs, and then it goes along the front of the building to the other strip drain on the other exit.
okay. And now what about on the owner's property to the left? Is there gonna be anything
We're not
needed?
Doing anything, so we're not touching that property on the left, even though it's the owner's property. We haven't done anything with drainage there.
Okay,
We're just picking up what's coming off the rear and getting it into our system along with our entire site as it is now.
okay. But we feel that with the retaining wall being there, it's not gonna add water in between there. It's
No,
gonna
it's
go
not.
directed that
No,
way.
it's not. And that makes
Okay.
it cool. Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wood, oh, hold on, yes, Mark.
Just to follow up on what John was saying, in case there is some water that comes off the property, ends up on Hamlet Turnpike, small amounts even, it freezes in the winter, they're responsible for that.
I think that would be maintenance with salting and whatnot.
Town side, or
The building owner would have to take care of it. It was in his driveway.
is that something we have to take aware of?
I get a stipulation of approval.
I'm just nervous because I've seen it before where the water sits in there and freezes, and then I get a call, there's a big ice patch
Yep.
here.
I'm sure they'll have a maintenance agreement for snow plowing, and that could be put right into a contract like Drew said he'd go along with.
Okay, Mr. Wood.
For my next witness, Chelsea, please.
Well,
Raise your right hand, be sworn
Please
in.
raise your right hand, state your name, spell your last.
Chelsea Gleis, Gleis.
You swear or affirm the testimony you'll give this evening before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, proceed.
Ms. Gleis, would you give the benefit of the public and members of the board your professional and educational background?
Yes, I have a master's in urban planning from Columbia University. I've been a licensed professional planner in New Jersey since 2020, and I've testified at a number of boards, including Englewood, Wanacue, Verona, Cedar Grove, Garfield, Summit, and Little Ferry.
You've been qualified as an expert witness in the field of land use planning,
I have.
and your background is land use planning, and you are associated with Burgess Associates, which is a well-known planner throughout the state of New Jersey.
That's correct.
With that said, you've had the opportunity to review this application, review the plans, and review the variance requests that we are making here.
I have.
You've also had the ability to review the history of this and the prior approval of 2018.
I have.
So what I would like you to do is give the board an overview of your analysis from a planning perspective, and then to correlate your analysis with the municipal land use law requirements under NJSA 40:55D-70C1 and C2. Please proceed.
So I'll start by pointing out two of the previously granted variances, which are no longer, which have been brought into compliance with the current application. The first being the number of parking spaces. The application is now in compliance with the required number of parking spaces, providing 69 spaces where 66 is required. Secondly is regarding the number of trees. The application is now providing the required number of 11 trees. So that's just a little bit of background with regards to the prior approval.
So anytime a variance is requested and it can be later eliminated from a planning perspective, does that constitute a positive element?
Absolutely.
Please proceed.
Now turning to the new variances, which are being requested of the application due to the installation of the stormwater detention system and the required disturbance of the steep slopes, and hence the creation of the additional 14 parking spaces. So just going through the 4 variances which we're seeking tonight, the first is for maximum improved coverage. 60.44% is proposed, where 50% is permitted. And again, this is due to the increased surface area of the additional parking spaces. And I'll get to the positive and negative criteria and the statutory criteria in a moment, but I'm just going to go through the 4 variances and then I'll go through. Secondly is the disturbance to the sloped area of greater than 15%. The third variance is the surface parking setback. 0 is proposed, where 4 feet is required. Now a similar variance was granted in the prior application for parking in a different area, but this same variance is being requested for a portion of the parking at the northwest portion where the property juts to the west, abutting the neighboring property. That is considered a side yard setback, and it is at 0 feet where 4 feet is required. The last and fourth variance is with regards to the construction of the retaining wall, which is over the allowable maximum of 6 feet in height and 100 feet in length. As we discussed earlier tonight, the retaining wall will be a maximum height of 18 feet and 15 feet in other parts, as the engineer went through that, but the variance is for over 6 feet in height and 100 feet in length. So those are the 4 variances, and now we'll talk about the statutory criteria. We could go through one of 2 ways. The first is the C1 variance route, the physical features test for a property of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of the property. Next, and the route that we're going to take tonight, is the C2 public benefits test. And regarding that, and so the public benefits test, and then we'll get to the negative criteria. So starting with the positive criteria with regards to the C2 public benefits test, I already mentioned that there's the public benefit of the 2 prior variances no longer being required. But with regards to the variances that we are requesting tonight, so first and foremost, they are bringing the parking compliance into, bringing the number of parking spaces into compliance, and providing stormwater management where it previously was not existing on the site. I believe the application furthers the purposes of the MLUL. Goal A, encouraging municipal action to guide the appropriate use of land in a manner to promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Goal G, providing sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. And Goal I, promoting a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques. And these are the application is required to further the intent of specific portions of the MLUL, and these are those 3 portions that we believe are applicable here. And looking at the negative criteria, I see no substantial detriment to the public good. It's providing additional parking to bring the site into compliance, providing additional landscaping along Hamburg Turnpike. I see no substantial impairment to the intent of the zone plan. As I mentioned earlier, the master plan recommends, there's a master plan recommendation regarding parking and circulation, including moving the parking to the side or rear of the property, and that is exactly what we're doing here. And lastly, I believe it does not impair the master plan goals pertaining to protecting and preserving water resources and watershed lands for flood control with regards to the addition of the stormwater management system.
So the litmus test that is made under the municipal land use law pertains to whether there is and they use the word substantial benefit that would outweigh the detriments. In your opinion, based upon the testimony and the foundation basis that you've given tonight, is it your opinion that these things that you've listed constitute a substantial benefit?
I do believe so.
And that includes not only the ability to meet the goals of the master plan by putting the parking to the side or to the rear, but also meeting the goals that was not there before of a better drainage system than was ever approved before.
Yes, exactly.
And with that said, even though we're not looking at the C1 criteria per se, you do recognize from a planning perspective that the property itself has what's recited in the municipal land use law as an unusual topographic condition.
Yes, I do.
And based upon the engineering standards here, your opinion that it's being appropriately addressed.
I do.
And nothing further.
Thank you. Carl, did you get an advance letter or information regarding the testimony on this?
I don't believe so, but I did talk to Ms. Russell, who handles the planning, and Ms. Lawler. We're not concerned with the planning aspects of this. I do have a planner's license, but I can't testify as a planner tonight. Although what they expressed to me was, it appears that the qualifications are being met.
Okay, so with that said, are there any questions from the members of the board regarding planning issues for Ms. Gleiss, is it?
Gleiss.
Gleiss.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, so the one, when you talk about the negative, I understand all the positives from a Hamburg Turnpike in a commercial area. One of the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting was one of the residents brought up from now where they live from up above, looking down, that even though the trees and shrubs, whatever, which was on the applicant's property, probably had the right to do whatever he wanted to, now opens it up. So now, it's any kind of protection that they had, they don't have. And now we just heard about a lighting, study that was being done, and I'm sure it's gonna be within ordinance. But for the people who had shrubs and bushes blocking there, didn't have to see that. Now they have to see that. So is there any consideration by the applicant to, I know they were his trees and he knocked them down, but any consideration to put any shrubs back there so that they don't have to see that?
Well, we had not, I'll address that, we had not shown that on our plan. There was testimony at the last meeting that there are still substantial growth up there that, with certain canopy that would thwart the ability to put additional plants of any substance there. But we also recognize that as far as the lighting and everything is concerned, it meets code requirements, and that lighting is obviously only 12 feet in height where we have an 18-foot wall. So it's not something that's seen from those people above when they look out. So I think at this point, the applicant has, they've cleaned up the top of that site. They're going to put that fence up on the top of that wall, and I think that should be sufficient for what's being proposed here.
Okay, I would leave that into the public comment to see if they agree with that.
Well, here's a question for you, Mr. Whitaker. If, for example, as a result of the construction and whatnot, some of those trees that are there now, whether it's at your property or even slightly above it, if they should die just because of the construction, I would expect that those would be replaced with similar type of trees.
Absolutely. I would say that if trees are compromised in connection with this construction, we could stipulate that they would be replaced. And we could do that on the field level with the assistance of your engineer, where they mark certain ones and then put trees in for that purpose.
I think,
I have no trouble with that.
okay, I think, John's point's well taken.
It is, yes.
So I just want to make sure that we don't diminish anything that's not on your property. And you never know with construction of this type. I mean, the bulk of the excavation is done, which is the worst part, but it's a slippery slope, if you want to call it that, because of the water and the drainage, and you don't know if trees start to topple a little bit, so.
And we would stipulate that as far as species of tree, we would leave that to the advice of your engineer.
That's fine.
But-
John, is that?
Thank you.
Chairman, when you say trees of similar size, you're talking trees that are on that hill that are 20 feet tall, 25 feet tall.
Yeah, I'm not expecting to put in 25-foot trees,
No.
because the overburden on the rock may not be even deep enough to do that. And the
Correct.
ones that are there now have grown into the stratification of soils. So it would be something that an arborist would, or the engineer would approve that would work, because once you get into that area up there, you just can't dig a hole.
Understood,
And, you're gonna run into rock pretty quickly.
understood.
So it may involve low-growth shrub-type stuff, which would still accomplish some of the
It would be
results. So,
some form of an arborvitae or something that's.
right, something that's,
Deer resistant,
Something, you know,
yes.
even possibly along the top of the wall, behind the fence, white pines, arborvitae, something, just some sort of screening.
Understood.
so I would leave that up to as a field judgment,
Field
but
judge, field-
with the
yes.
expectation from the board that efforts be made to do that.
Yes, no
And it's
problem.
been so stipulated, so. Anyone else from the board have questions? Okay, as far as the planning goes, I agree most of that's been resolved in prior submissions, and tonight you explained pros and cons of how it reflects to the municipal land use law. That's all great. There is public benefit, as you indicated, so one of the decisions the board will make later is, do we feel that the public benefit outweighs the bad parts of any kind of construction? So we'll talk about that when we get to deliberation, but I think you answered the questions that we need. Is there any other testimony that
No,
you have?
that we submit. That
Okay,
concludes our presentation.
okay. So at this point, I'm going to open up the meeting for public comment. Going to ask you to, if you could come up to the table and state your name and your address and ask your question about anything that you have with respect to the first or second meeting, and then there'll be one more opportunity after this to make statements. This is just for questions to clarify testimony. So please feel free to step up and, again, state your name and your address and proceed.
I'm Kathleen Strauss, 174 Ridge Drive. I'm on the board at Summit Falls, above, on top of the hill.
Please spell your last name, Claire.
S-T-R-A-S.
Darren DiCarlo, D-E-C-A-R-L-O, 87 Lakeview Court, Lakes, Vice President of the board in Summit Falls.
So, last time we met, I believe you said that you were gonna put a fence along the top of the property as well, not just along the bottom.
And we said we would take a fence under the, you're asking me a question.
Yeah,
Yeah, let finish, tell him you're finished, and then he'll go. You do have a
Okay.
reporter, so
Okay.
you ask the whole question, then stop, and then he'll go.
Okay, so I believe that you said as a friend and neighbor or whatever, you would put a fence along the top of our property line as well as the fence down below.
So we said we would take it under advisement. The problem we have in installing a fence along the property line is that we don't have accessibility to get those type of things up there after this wall is built because of the topographic conditions. We are going to get that wall built, I'm told, but after that, it's very hard to get back up there unless we had the ability or permission from the association to come through your property to place any plants in that area or any fencing. So I don't know, and I know you're vice president of the board, but that would be something we'd have to get permission from through the board, because they're the property owners up to the top.
Yeah, so that's something we could definitely discuss. We could.
Absolutely. Client wants to be a good neighbor.
Okay, can I finish?
I'm sorry, without having a
That's
problem.
something we could discuss, along with, what type of fence it's gonna be. Is it a chain link fence? What will be the fence on our side of the road?
Well, what we had looked at was a chain link fence.
So we just discussed two different fences though, right? One on top of the wall and then one on the bottom.
Correct.
And that's at the time?
If we have permission to put such a fence in there, the applicant would be willing to put that fence in.
As well as shrubbery that goes along as well? Arborvitae's or something that we, they could eat like a deer, but something that we could put up.
Our position would be one or the other.
One or the other?
It is on our property. There's nothing there now. We're willing to do something, but not both.
There was a cliff there.
I have a question for you, just to clarify this a little bit. Right now, the top of the wall is where it's shown on the plan, and your property is set back from that by, I don't know, maybe 75 feet down to maybe 50 or 40 feet, and then over 100 feet on the right-hand side or the south side. That's the property line between Summit Falls and your client. So the question is, if you're putting a fence on top of the wall because of the safety requirements, and this second fence goes in, are you still talking on, I'd like to know exactly where you're requesting it and where you're proposing to agree, because there's a lot of space between the back of that wall and the roadway on the top, which is beyond the property line. So if you're talking about the property line and you're talking about the roadway, I just want to make sure we understand where on the property, both sides, is that second fence being asked for?
I would have Mr. Doolittle.
What you're asking us, because we're asking.
Both, I'm asking both. I'm asking where they propose and where you request.
Okay.
So I can see if there's first a difference, and secondly, if one versus the other is going to be more effective.
So we would like it on the property.
On the property
On the
line,
property line.
which is in the middle of the woods.
Well, I don't think those woods are there anymore like that.
There's a drop.
There's a drop.
Michael, can I help you here?
Yeah, sure.
So I walked the property. So what had happened here is, there's one corner here, and I do believe it's somewhat of a little hazard. So what you had here is you had two tiers. You have the top where the condos are built.
All right.
It came down probably 25 or 30 feet, leveled off, all right, and then it went down again. So on this corner right in here, of where that lot comes in, they basically took that buffer zone out of there. So now it's pretty steep down to that wall, right in this corner.
Is that about where this rock wall is shown on there?
Yeah, so for about,
Please stop. One person at a time.
so for about 30 or 40 feet, it does come pretty steep, sir. So what I saw, I think from the gazebo up to maybe the first condo, if they put on that top ridge, maybe any kind of fence, what they want, 2 or 3 feet back off of where that first slope drops off, that'd probably do it. As far as what the growth is in there and everything, it's pretty sparse. There's not a lot of growth there, probably because it's a lot of rock. There's not a lot of trees, so it really probably wasn't that thick to start with. From what I saw, a lot of just dead stuff, and it just, it looked like the woods. And it wasn't dense at all. So I think if they could agree to it, from the gazebo up to maybe the 20 feet into where that first condo corner is, that would probably, I would hope it would satisfy both of them. But from what I saw and I walked it, there's definitely a hazard there. There's no doubt about it. It's steep. From the top of that ridge down to the wall, it's steep. So if somebody went off of that, they'd go pretty good. So that's just my opinion.
Okay, then you're not talking about the wall itself, you're talking about behind the wall.
Right, up on top of the ridge where the condos are.
Okay.
It would just be a hazard if there's a kid back there or something.
What I'd like to do is define the area that the fence, before we leave here, if this goes to an approval, I would like to define exactly what's expected, what's agreed to, and it's stipulated in the resolution, so that's why I'm asking for a little more refinement. What do you agree to? What does the engineer think should be done? And what does our engineer think of that? And taking into account the comments that the board makes.
What I would like to do is just have our engineer, using the plan, show us what you suggested and point it out on the board so we understand it.
Fence that I'd already testified about, the 4-foot chain link fence on top of the retaining wall will run around the dark line on here.
Right.
I believe you're looking for a 4-foot fence along this back property line here and down into here. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right, maybe 1 foot into the property line, something like that. And we would offer that up. The problem is access, like Mr. Whitaker said. None of this wall and parking lots here, we're not driving trucks and equipment up this slope. Bring concrete and fence posts and chain link in for the fencing. We have to come in from the top of the hill, because this is the top of the hill, basically. So with that condition, I think we would be willing to give you that chain link fence.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so-
I just got a question about
Sure.
this proposal. Does the decision that they're gonna work out together have anything to do with this board?
Yes, because it's gonna be part of the resolution. It's not that we're not gonna get involved with the properties per se, that has to come from the board and the attorney to the agreement to allow them to build there, because they would actually be working on someone else's property. So that much the attorneys take care of, but I would like the resolution that we come up with to reflect exactly what's been
I
agreed
think that
to.
the resolution would include a condition that in the event that the applicant receives written sufficient approval from the property owner that would give them access, they will construct a fence, a 4-foot high, chain link fence that would be delineated by our engineer, or approved on it. Those plans will be made, but it's gonna have a little note, subject to written approval that is satisfactory to the applicant. Yes.
To be installed on the applicant's property.
Applicant's property, we couldn't do, you haven't given notice to do anything off the property, so
That's
we
what
couldn't
we
do
were talking
yeah.
about, that
It has to be on your property.
Within a certain timeline. Because I don't want to say that, they're going to do it, and then a year from now, we still don't have it, so.
Things are subject to them getting the written approval to do it, so
Correct.
that can't happen until they get written approval that is sufficient, and then I'm sure that our engineer would make sure that that gets done as part of this.
So you're looking for access agreement to get to your property to put the fence just off the property line,
On our property. correct?
on your property, off the property
And
line.
it would be something that would have to be completed before we would be, your borough engineer would sign off and saying that all the improvements have been made and that we have a final CO or certificate of compliance.
Which is why I want it done here, and then that becomes a condition.
So it's mine.
Okay, Anne Marie, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, I think it should be a chain link fence for safety. I don't think putting bushes there would be, a safety buffer. If they want to put bushes there, they can do it. I think if it's either or, if the fence makes more sense.
Well, are you agreeable to fencing?
We are agreeable.
Yes,
We
yeah.
definitely fence.
And you are agreeable to work with them to give them access to put that fence in
Absolutely.
if your board approves it?
Yeah,
Okay, and the 4-foot high is the standard fence, would not require a variance, and the color of the fence could be worked out. Usually it's green or black,
Yeah, it's a dark fence.
something dark, yeah.
And what about the landscaping that could just block some of the view there? Because we'll see in the summer, it fills in there, and it used to fill in, and now it's just like a big hole. So if we had some type of shrubbery along that fence, doesn't have to be all around the entire fence, just where there's that hole where you saw, I think that's,
So on the northwest corner of the lot,
yes.
where the wall takes a turn, you're saying in that area? That's the closest to your property.
I'm not sure if it's.
you have photos.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know exactly where that is from their point of view, like from the bottom.
Okay, why don't we,
You could change this so they could give some testimony about pictures if you want. Or you could wait till after.
Well, Carmelina has the pictures.
Please,
let's just see how we get, I want to see to what extent we have an agreement. And then I don't necessarily want to get involved in whether or not you get 2 shrubs or 3 shrubs or no shrubs. I wanna just get the fence straightened out. And then, once the fence is straightened out, we have an area it's gonna be installed in. There's an agreement that has to be reached between you and that property owner. So your board, your attorney has to deal with them, but that becomes a condition, if we should approve this, to say that this is gonna be part of the project. The 2 engineers can get involved to make sure that it's in the right spot, and that you approve of the method of construction, because I don't believe, there wasn't a detail on fencing in here, was there, for chain link?
There is a chain link.
Was there a chain link detail? I didn't remember seeing it.
Yeah.
There is one? Okay, well,
Yeah, chain link detail.
okay, so you have to just make sure that whatever's built is built according to the standards. The shrubbery thing is gonna be really, I don't know how you feel about that, Mr. Whitaker, because that can get carried away unless there's specific spots that you're concerned about, as you mentioned at one spot. I don't wanna end up with a line of shrubs that are not gonna do well in a wooded area anyway.
Well, what's to say, the next neighbor doesn't want shrubs, or you're only gonna plant 6, but you want 10, they already testified that the fence is gonna be just onto their property. Now you're gonna move the fence back farther to allow for planting of shrubs, watering of shrubs. If the shrub die, I personally don't think it's realistic to ask for a fence and shrubs.
We concur.
That's because you don't live there.
All right,
Go ahead.
what about, like we mentioned before, I heard brought up about the trees that are there now. A lot of the trees that are there, the roots are exposed. The dirt's just running right out the bottom of them.
Exposed as a result of construction, or just
Yes.
exposed because it's on rock?
Because the trees were there. It's because of the construction, the dirt's not there anymore, and it's just flowing down. When it rains, all the dirt just keeps coming down, because it's a ledge now. So it's exposing the roots of the trees. So now when those trees go down, I think it was Mr. Keating that brought it up before, they had mentioned that they would replace ones that die or need to be replaced. How are we gonna make that determination? So I want some kind of detail in that, just like, you can say it right now.
That's to be determined by the board engineer. We said we stipulated to that already.
Yeah, they stipulated to replacing any tree that does not
Compromise.
live as a result of the construction, not something that's 50 feet away.
Well, absolutely. How, are we gonna have an inspection prior to this? How does that work?
Well, there'll be continuous inspection. Someone will be out there, whether it's from the town or the engineer, on a regular basis during any construction. And if there's a problem that you see, you're welcome to bring it to the attention. The building department will have someone out there, as well as periodic inspections by the engineer. If you feel there's an issue that we haven't picked up, you're more than welcome to bring it to Karen's attention. She'll let the building official know, and he can evaluate it. But I just don't want this to become a balloon issue. I'd like to define as much as we can and be reasonable about what isn't.
Absolutely. I mean, when you see the pictures, you'll see the roots are hanging there. I just have a real concern is, and a lot of people in the community have come to the board and asked this question. How did they start jackhammering without any inspections of our foundations? We had complaints while the jackhammering was going on, that they felt the vibrations all the way on the top, on the other side, okay? Now what happens, a small crack happened, and in 2 years that gets bigger and bigger. There was no inspections done to our units prior to all this starting. So now we have no way of coming back and saying, hey, this was from, and why wasn't that done?
This board is only allowed, is a passive board. Boards are passive. Things come to it. Nobody on this board goes out and enforces it. Gotta listen. So, yeah, the inspector wasn't around, somebody didn't bring it to attention, but that's not this board's, and I don't mean to be curt about it, but that's just not what they do.
It's no protocol or anything?
And we can't
No,
put
again,
anything,
not for this board. You're like asking, why didn't the police do something? This board, we're not. When somebody comes and asks permission to do it, that's their job. They look at what is permitted in the ordinance, and what is being requested. If they, or anybody does something improper, that's not the job of this board. This board does what comes to it.
Is that improper? That's what I'm trying to.
Again, you're asking them, that's an enforcement. Did somebody else not do their job? That's not what this board does. They're asking for permission now to do something. That's all they can do is review that. And I don't mean to be cutting you off, but that's not within their power.
See, the board deals with what we're doing tonight. When we're done, however the decision is made, we create a resolution. The resolution has stipulations in it. That is then the end of our involvement. It goes to the building department. And anything that happens after our approval has to be built in accordance. And that's why I made the comment earlier about making sure that the construction complies with the approvals here. And then it's up to the building department to determine that, yes, they did comply with that. But once it leaves our board from the resolution perspective, we are not involved any longer, and anything like that anyway would become a legal issue, right? Between the two parties. You're certainly able to do whatever you choose, but it's not something we would deal with.
Okay, I have another question too. With this water filtration system, so I'm not an engineer, I don't know anything about it, but does anybody monitor that from year to year to make sure it doesn't fail or go on fire, or I don't know? And who's required to do that, and how often do they do that?
That's part of the agreement. It's in the stipulations.
Operation and maintenance.
So, go ahead, explain.
The attorney at the beginning testified to, or stated about an operation and maintenance manual that would be tied to the deed. So let's say years down the road, they sell the property, someone else comes in and purchases it. There's a manual that's in place that needs to be implemented by the owners of the property on how to maintain the system. And every year, a maintenance report needs to be provided from the owners of the site to the borough. It's part of the borough's requirements for the borough stormwater management permit. Every town has a stormwater management permit with the state of New Jersey. So as part of it, an application like this, the applicant needs to do their due diligence, do their homework, maintain it, make sure it's properly operational, and then basically submit a report that's testifying that everything's good to go. If something fails, let's say something breaks, something fails, whatever, in that report, they have to state, this broke, this is what we did to remedy it, and sign off on it and submit it to the town. The town then in turn reviews everything and then submits updated information to the state every year. Right now, each town's going through it, their reports are due May 1st or 2nd of every year, and it takes care of the prior year. So when this is done by December 31st of each year, this applicant will have to submit it to the town, so the town to do their permitting on it.
Okay, and then it was also discussed that they had some kind of seismic machine or something for any vibrations or noise or anything else, and who would monitor that? The same process? They were gonna put something in?
The construction that goes on is being monitored by the applicant's engineer. It would be overseen by the construction department here in the town.
Okay.
And in connection with the drainage aspect that I stipulated to, we recognize all properties get sold sometime or transferred. The reason the maintenance manual and the deed restriction is recorded in the county clerk's office, so no future owner could suggest, I didn't know about my responsibility to do this, because it's on record, and when they close or they buy the property, they're told about it because it's in their title search.
Okay. Okay.
One last thing. The lights, I think it was maybe 12 feet or 14 feet?
12 feet is the stipulation.
Could we just have it, make sure that none of them pointing towards shining in our direction of our community?
The testimony was that the lighting will meet the code requirements, not bleed over the property, and we also stipulated that if such, shields would be put on it to hold it from the sides. That was the testimony of Mr. Tulip.
Also, just for informational purposes, this plan that they provided tonight has a diagram that shows the light spillage. And they're required not to have a light spillage on adjacent properties. And if you want to look at that plan, you're welcome to see it, but it's basically showing that 0 light spillage will occur off the property in the back. So that's more or less your guarantee that you're not going to get light shining in your direction.
That's concerning.
Well, if you look down, you're gonna see something lit, because it's lighting the pavement, but none of the light spillage will shoot up towards the buildings. And their testimony before was that they put the lights at the right elevation, which we require. They're not asking for variances on that, and they're not changing the density of the lighting. So from what our engineer said, it's compliant. And I think you'll find that it's just not going to be an issue. That it's done right. And then the engineer testified to that on our behalf as well as the applicant's engineer.
So what they're showing, just to piggyback to the chairman, what they're showing at the property line, that rear property line, it's a 0 foot candle, so there's nothing there. Essentially, they lose it behind the retaining wall. It goes to 0.1 behind the retaining wall, and then I gotta say, maybe halfway up on the closest corner, it turns to 0. So that rear property line is 0. You got, according to the photometrics, you're not gonna see anything.
Mr. Chairman, a question to bring up. I agree with Mr. Trost that we have to identify better, I think, these tree situations. What happens if a tree dies at 60 feet in? Are we considering that as it died because of the work done?
I was going to leave it to the borough engineer and maybe the assistance of his arborist or somebody in his.
We have an arborist.
Oh, you have your arborist to look, yes.
Yeah, I think that's what they stipulated to. There is somewhat of a subjective call, but they've stipulated that a person that is involved with Pompton Lakes will make the determination if there is something that is dying or a tree that is dying, and the borough official, either our engineer or the arborist, makes the determination that it was caused or as a result of this construction, they'll do replacement that's appropriate.
We will need,
Yeah.
obviously, approval from the association to get the tree in, but that's what would have to be done.
Yes, but that means that, yeah, to some extent, there's a judgment call, but they have consented and stipulated that the borough official can make that judgment call. Is it caused by it? And if so, they will replace it. And there's no video that is going to show a shovel in the ground causing the root, that doesn't happen, but you can make some judgments on what's causing what's causing those roots. I mean, that is a judgment call.
No. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other members from the public wish to speak? Yes, ma'am, come up, please state your name and address.
My name is Lee Rossi.
Now, please, you gotta say it so it's, wait, repeat it when you get here, because it's gotta go into the microphone.
I'm Lee Rossi. I live at 32 Ridge Drive, and for the last few years, Dave Hall, who is the head of this construction, has been talking with me and promising all of these ideas on what they're going to do to help us not see below and to retain everything. Excuse me, I'm pretty nervous and I'm upset because I asked him to speak with our board, the Summit Falls board. It's been about 3 years. He has refused to do that. Now, I'm hearing that we can't get any help from you, so the engineer...
We have a question here, or because
Yes,
this is just for questions, not statements?
I want to know, okay, I want to know what happens when they refuse to put all this, everything back the way it was. And Carmelina has my photos that you haven't seen.
Okay.
And there has been dents.
Why don't you just explain?
And I would like the board to see them. I would
Yep.
like this attorney to see them. Is that what you are, an attorney, sir?
Last I looked, yes.
Okay.
Not a problem.
The quick answer is everything that's part of this application that they have agreed to do, and that they're, as we said, if any of the trees.
I understand what you're saying, but we need help if they don't do it.
Well, they will
And I
not
want
get.
to know what we can
Listen to
do
what he's
about
telling
that.
you.
The ultimate result is they can't operate at the site and go do anything until they get their certificate of occupancy that they have completed all this. So our engineer monitor and our people in the building inspectors make sure things are going in. They will not sign off and allow it to be complete. It can never be sold, it can never be operated until they get the sign off. You have done everything, which would include if any trees get killed as a result of this, they have to get planted. So
What about the ones that have been killed during the whole process?
again, I don't know that.
Well, we have photos here. Carmelina has them to show you.
Okay, but I was answering your first question. Your first question is what they've agreed to. So everything they've agreed to, that I don't have to repeat myself, that they don't get their sign off and they don't get to enjoy the fruits of getting this done until they do everything that is required by the resolution, and our engineer says, yes, they've completed everything.
And you'll agree to that?
So for example, if they said, I'm not building the fence, or they don't do it at all, we have the ability to force that, but they won't get a CO unless it's complete. So anything approved here, you'll get to see that, one way or another. Either that or they won't open up the facility.
Recognize there's a commercial building there that's not making any income right now, so they have,
I know.
it's something that propels them to move ahead and get this done.
Yes.
I hope you're right. May I have your card, sir, to give to the board?
Is there any other questions you have?
No, I have lots of things to say, but I don't think you want me to.
Well, if there's no more questions, we're going to open it up one more time for statements.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else care to have a question? Okay, I'm going to close the public session. Mr. Whitaker, as a result of the questions, do you have anything else you want to bring forward?
No, we have provided the stipulations to you. I believe under the circumstances, we have been able to present to you a site plan that meets all of the proper engineering standards. You recognize that there's uncontroverted testimony that what we're proposing now is far superior to what was previously approved by the basis of a better parking situation, not only more of it, but it's now meeting your master plan requirements and being on the side or to the rear. A drainage plan that is much better than before, that will meet all of the required standards and runs with the land for any future owner of the property as far as maintenance is concerned. And you recognize municipal land use law understands that variance relief is necessary under the C1 or C2 criteria. And I believe the testimony that's been provided tonight serves as a proper foundation and basis for granting that relief. So we would respectfully request preliminary and final amended site plan approval and variance relief. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions? I'm going to reserve our final deliberation until we have any final comments from the public, but anything that's unclear or...
Well, Chairman, I just had a thought. The concern seems to be with regard to this fencing, both from a safety standpoint as well as the ability to block the view from down below. Why not consider something other than a chain link fence, something that would provide both safety and a visual barrier?
Okay.
I mean, the gentleman said that they would be acceptable for one or the other. Why don't you combine the two and put a fence up that provides safety and blocks the view?
Okay, any other, really looking for questions that maybe not have been answered? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask if the public cares to make a statement now. There's no more questions allowed now. I'm going to open it up to the public for statements. If you have an opinion, you're free to state them now, and if not, we'll move on. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public session, and we will now do deliberation. I think the application is fairly complete. I've seen everything here that was requested has been acceptable to the engineer. Carl, is there anything you need to add to this?
Nothing to add, just the items that we discussed to make conditional approval. We went over it a few times. I'm okay with those items.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments about the site before we go to a vote?
Okay. Chairman, I just want to make sure I'm understanding 100%.
Sure.
They're going to work, they have to go back to their board, their board has to vote on what they're asking to let them on the property, correct? They have to get an approval of that.
That's right.
first off.
It can't be done by just a couple people
Right, so
here.
they would have to get their own vote for that. And then they would have to work out with the owner on what they're looking to put in, or are we determining?
Right now,
We're stipulating to a chain link fence if the board, for the association permits us access to install it.
So that was my question.
Yeah, so as long as the board is in agreement, which it sounds like they would be, they will have access to their property from the rear to install a 4-foot-high chain link fence. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But that's not, that's all. That's not acceptable. I'm sorry.
I closed it to the public session, and it was acceptable a few minutes ago.
No,
Well, then somebody should have stated that you had a problem with that.
I think I did. I'm sure I did. No, they have to replace every.
Not open it again.
I can't take any more testimony at this point. Can that be reopened or not?
You can reopen it, but I think you have to go back to what you want. The applicant has said that they're willing to do.
Yeah, but now they're saying that they wanted the chain link fence and the applicants agreed to it. But now they're saying it's not good enough, so I don't know what the not good enough is. So I can open it up and see what the complaint is.
Yeah, you closed out, ask the board if you want, they can open it up.
Do the board wish me to open that up for?
No.
No? Anyone else?
It's been discussed.
It's,
Okay. Okay, so at this point, we're not gonna go back to the public. We've had 2 opportunities tonight and 1 the last time. The agreement that the applicant has made is on the record, and it will be part of the resolution, and anything beyond this,
Can I ask the attorney a question? Real quick? If the applicant has agreed to a chain link fence, they go before their board says, no, we don't want a chain link fence, but we make it a requirement of our resolution. They say no to it, he's willing to do it, and it doesn't get done, then what?
It's only a requirement if the board, if they get approval from them. If their approval is for something other, then they have not, their trigger for them having to do it has not been triggered. They have to get approval to go on, to traverse that property, to come on and build a 4-foot chain link fence in the area that will be delineated on the plans. If they get something other than that, then it hasn't been satisfied.
So then there's no penalty for the applicant if.
If they're
it doesn't
not
get
given
done.
permission to do precisely
Okay.
what is in the resolution, that is correct.
Okay.
so if the board all of a sudden decided they wanted a 10-foot-high wooden fence, and he said no, they're under no obligation to do that.
Right.
Unless, if the board said you have permission to go onto our property and build a chain link fence, you have to traverse the property to carry that stuff on, and they say yes. And by the way, we'd also like a 10-foot fence. They're gonna have to build a 4-foot fence.
Right.
But if the board was to say, nope, you can't come on our property unless you build a 9-foot fence, they will have not received it, they will have no obligation to do anything.
Right.
Okay.
No fence at all.
Okay, so with the understanding that the applicant has made some accommodations to the adjacent property owners for replacement of trees that are considered damaged and/or should fail in the near future, subject to review by our engineer and/or arborist, and subject to getting board approval from the Summit Falls group to allow construction of the 4-foot chain link fence that we've gotten an agreement for him to do. That means that he's accommodated to some degree what their concerns are. Beyond that, it's neighbor to neighbor. I mean, if you choose to do something on your property, that's entirely up to your property owner. Beyond that, the rest of the resolution, which I'll make sure that we review before we go to a vote, to show that everything that's been agreed to tonight You have that already? Sure. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll take, is there any other discussion on any board member?
Mr. Chairman, I think we should reopen this to the public. I think that the folks sitting out here agreed to the chain link only because they didn't consider the alternative, which I suggested, which would be some sort of a barrier visually as well as a safety issue. And they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they agreed only to the chain link because they didn't have a different alternative at the time.
I think they agreed because that's what the applicant offered.
Right, but at the time, they didn't know that there was another alternative, so they agreed, I would think.
But we're beyond that now in the meeting. I
don't think there is another alternative. I don't think the applicant's willing to offer an alternative to the chain link.
We could ask him.
He did, he said one or the other.
Right, but
He
that.
said he's willing to put in a 4-foot chain.
So could we ask him if he would consider the alternative?
That would have been fine earlier on, but we're done with the,
That was involved in the meeting, we kept bringing it up. What do you mean it would have been?
we can't really have anything from the audience anymore.
Oh.
All right, okay, here we go. We're gonna do this. We're gonna take a straw poll vote right now. Does this meeting get reopened for comment? If the straw poll says yes, I will open it up once more. If not, I will not. So straw poll vote, open it or not?
Open.
Open.
Not.
No.
Not.
Not.
Doesn't matter at this point now. Open.
So we're 1, 2,
3, you're open, everybody else to no.
yeah, so we're not opening it up again. And consequently, the 4-foot chain link fence is what you're providing. If you choose to go further than that, that's between you and the property owner. Okay. John?
So since we're deliberating, and
Yes.
what Emery brought up was a safety issue, so there's a chance that we could leave tonight with the resolution being approved, and a fence might not be built at all.
Well, there's two issues.
Do we want to let that happen?
The fence on top of the wall by law
Right,
has to be there.
right.
So there will be a fence along the entire wall on the top so that it's not a hazard.
Okay.
If there's an area that's a hazard, then that's something that the engineer would have to determine. And if it's determined to be a hazard, as a case of a retaining wall kind of thing, then that would be something that they would be required to do, correct?
Yes, it would go through building department,
Right.
and building inspector would, review the item and coordinate efforts on that.
So if there's a particularly steep area that when you're all done with your grading in the wall, if there's a determination that there's still a hazard there, that's not something that we would have to stipulate here because it would be part of the construction code.
Got it.
And the construction code would determine whether or not there's a hazard, basically.
It would be a code item at that point.
Okay.
Right now, what the code item is, has to do strictly with the retaining wall.
Okay.
By code, because of how high it is,
Mhm.
you need protection on top of that wall. And that's what's on here. As
Right.
far as along the rear property line, there's not one there today. There may be one there in the future, there may not be one there in the future. That's between what they're going to be negotiating.
I was just kind of going by what Brian said, what it used to exist, with a little bit of a drop off and then play up. Now it's a drop off, so how far is the drop off now to that fence on the retaining wall?
Yeah. I'd like to have, you look at that just to be sure, even during construction, that may need a temporary fence to prevent anybody from falling. It's just an issue that you and Sal can work out,
Yeah, I
the
can
construction
talk
department,
about that, yes.
Okay.
and figure out whether or not there needs to be some additional attention paid.
Especially during construction with a lot of items, a lot of times there's temporary items put up so that there's non-issue. This may or may not warrant it. I'll discuss it with the building inspector.
Okay.
It depends on what the final appearance looks like, whether or not a fence is needed. And that's something that you wouldn't have a say in because it's going to be a building department requirement or not.
Okay.
Yes, Mike?
And removal of trees on their own property has nothing to do really with anybody else. It's their own property or they want to.
Correct, unless it affects an adjacent property, it's their own decision.
Until the new ordinance comes in.
Yeah. You saw the new state ordinance that says that your own private property, now you can't take trees out.
Oh, okay.
It's amazing. All right, Rich, you have any comments?
No.
Okay. Tim?
I'm good.
Brian? Good. Anne Marie? Mike? Eck? Okay, and Carl, nothing else you have to add?
I have one just that's going to start the ball rolling on the permission. That I think would be a condition that within 45 days of the approval, the applicant must provide in writing a letter to the association, a description of the access that would be needed in order to build this 4-foot fence. So you're gonna have to say, we need X, and then that will be subject to being approved.
45 days after the resolution's adopted.
Yeah. So, I don't care when it is, I'm just trying to, you have to do, you're the first step. You have to put in writing what you need. Okay.
Okay, my comments are as follows. It's been a long process from the original application back in what, 17 or 18?
Before I was here, yes.
Yeah, and it's been back and forth between us and the county. I think the end result is positive. I think we've gotten a better project site. It's regrettable that we had to go through the issue of project stoppage because of the changes that were made and uncoordinated with the borough, but that's been resolved. The drainage system is approved by our engineer in the sense that it meets all the requirements. The lighting seems to be in order now. The site plan is mostly in conformance, except for the 4 items that they want to have a variance for, which we're going to have the attorney review very quickly. It seems like, obviously, the building is not an issue because it's already built. So it's just a matter of whether or not the site has been improved. In my opinion, that, between the wall and the drainage system, it's actually going to improve drainage from the adjacent property, which is a current issue. So I think on the merits, it warrants an approval, which is what I intend to vote for. Can you just review the conditions and specifically the 4 variance
The 4
requests?
variances were maximum improved coverage. I think they're asking for approximately 60% versus 50%, which is proposed. Disturbance of steep slopes over 15%, as provided on the plans, the exact number. The surface parking setback of 0 feet, there's 4 feet that's required, and construction of a retaining wall over 6 feet high and over 100 feet in length. It's going to be between 15 and 18 feet high. Those are the variants, and the conditions were listed by Mr. Whitaker. The initial ones from the previous meeting were listed at the beginning of the meeting. They're on the record, and some additional ones that we discussed.
Okay. If there's no questions, I'd like to have a motion for or against the approval or not approval of this application. Anyone care to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Approve the project site in accordance with the items that the attorney mentioned? Okay, second?
I'll second.
Second, Mr. Otto? Okay, any discussion on the motion? Do we need to add anything more to that, or everything you've got covered? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Simone?
Yes.
Mr. Fracaro?
Yes.
Mr. Trost?
Yes.
Ms. Michael?
Yes.
Mr. Otto?
Yes.
Mr. Keating?
Yes.
Mr. Bowlby?
No.
Mayor Sarah?
Yes.
And Councilman Bennett?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very
the
much for your
presentation.
time.
We're going to take a couple-minute break because I have a couple other things to go over on the agenda, just to give a chance for everybody to send it. Permit it, Mr. Whitaker. You guys have been in Ramsey for quite a while, huh?
So I celebrate my 50th year this year.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's great.
We had, my firm, True Engineers, did an awful lot. Wanted to go over some of the things that were addressed to us. There's a letter that went to CARM about the Passaic County Affordable Housing. And Morris County reviewed it, I assume, because it's an out-of-county, because it's a county job. And they, it's, you know, they went to another county to review. So they reviewed it. They had a few comments that they made. I don't know, did everybody get a copy of this letter from Morris County? Okay, so it's just a matter of them having to resolve a few things with the Morris County, mostly drainage, actually. So that's nothing that we need to worry about right now. There's another letter here from, this came from the State Planning Commission, and it has to do with State Development and Redevelopment Plan. There's discussions on the Highlands. As you probably all know, we are in the planning area of the Highlands, and we chose not to comply with the Highlands preservation requirements. So we are only bound by the planning area requirements. There's a decision the council has to make with respect to who gets responsibility for it, and I assume you're working on that. And then there's another one. This one is an ordinance that we're putting out to amend the Chapter 190 of the Municipal Code, amending the stormwater control regulations in compliance with the requirements of the DEP stormwater rule. That's being handled by the county, by the town. And I believe there's nothing there that we really need to worry about at this point, but just be aware that ultimately that becomes an issue of site plan approval. And there's a reminder once again about filling out the form that we need to fill out for,
Financial disclosure.
yeah, the financial disclosure forms. And then there's a question about our site plan, our planning, master plan committee. Has anything been done by the committee that warrants bringing back anything to you now? No? Okay, who was representing as a chair of that committee? John, okay. So I just would like periodic updates as to, you know, what you guys have gone through and if there's anything that's coming up for our review.
Okay.
I thought we were gonna get a consultant to work with us. You know?
Well, the consultant has to come after we get funding approval from the town,
Because that's why it's stalled.
because that's gonna take a lot of money from the town, so that's something that you guys have to come up with the funding to get the planning person from, I guess it's gonna be, the same person we've been dealing with, so.
Debbie did it the last time.
Yeah, Debbie did it, but now we have, Russell.
Kristen Russell.
So, it was Kristen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kristen is gonna be the one to ultimately be approved to work with you guys and the board.
Okay.
But there's no reason why you can't start reviewing, and especially with the information that we got from the planning commission to hand to the committee. So you have that, assignment. So, John, when it's appropriate, I'll just ask you to let me know that we have discussion on a given night.
Okay, will do. I know before Steve, it's left, we
Yeah.
had a couple of meetings to kind of kick it off, so we'll continue.
Okay. And we'll open it up to the public for any other comments on and off the record. Seeing none, close that.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one thing to add to you. I was asked by the mayor of Oakland to go to a meeting, because they're still pushing that cement plant on Colfax Avenue at the end of Pompton and Colfax. Of course, Oakland's against it.
Who's pushing that, the town or the developer?
County, actually.
The county?
But the freeholders from Bergen County are pushing for it. So, of course, Oakland's against it. I spoke up on our behalf saying we are totally against it. We will not support this. We might even go as far as changing our traffic patterns to not allow trucks on Colfax Avenue from our side. But there is still big talk about putting this plant in. If you know where Peters is, right there in Oakland, they want to use that whole site for a cement plant.
Is that what those signs are?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it said a dump, though.
It's a dump, they call it a dump,
Oh.
it's a cement dump.
Okay.
That's what they do, cement. So I just wanted to give an update that that's still trying to move forward.
I would absolutely recommend that the town look into restricting the load limit on the borough portion of Colfax. And that borough portion runs from the Oakland line right to the Jefferson Avenue, so a restriction there would certainly keep the traffic in Bergen County. If Bergen County wants the rateable, Bergen County can have the modulated traffic.
Now, and I spoke on behalf of, because they asked us, because of Tilcon, I deal with the community over here off Broad Street, I deal with those residents are used to every 6 months, and Tilcon's providing power washing their homes, and giving them gift certificates to clean their cars, and they had a street sweeper brought in, and police officers. These are all things that they didn't think of if this plant was to go over, and the neighbors were glad to hear that at least that was going on here in Pompton, so that's why they asked me to go speak over there. I think hopefully it dies and goes away, but if it doesn't, it gets pushed through, who knows what will happen from our side.
Is it an actual concrete plant or concrete recycling?
Concrete recycling.
So they're gonna be bringing it in and crushing it, they're not gonna be mixing it, okay.
Yeah, which is gonna be noise and dust.
A lot of vibration, yeah.
And a lot of truck traffic. So, is that something that the borough would consider doing the load restriction now? I wouldn't want to wait right until they approve it.
We talked about it, the issue becomes, and because what would stop us and Oakland from doing it, I think it might be called spot zoning at that point, because you're not allowing trucks to enter either side to get to an area.
It's not spot zoning. The borough of Oakland has to decide what they want for spot zoning, if they want to do that. They can't get away with it, but, I mean, they could try to turn it down, but the site itself is completely in Oakland, and what they allow in Oakland, either through agreeable or through court, is one thing. But we are entitled, just like Riverdale did with North Pompton Turnpike, that we're allowed to control our own roads. It's not a county road, it's a borough road.
That's what they're talking about.
Well, you can't get to Part A without going through Part B. And I don't see any reason why we can't restrict tonnage on our portion of a road, and that would be considered something of spot zoning.
I don't think it would be, but people can argue about things whenever they want.
Yes, and if they go to court, they go to court.
But it's something with the council.
I'd rather not wait until something is approved.
Yeah, well, the problem is that there are some trucks that use that route for other things.
Well, maybe they can't anymore.
Yeah, well, that's something we'll have to discuss, yeah.
I'd like to, does the board, I mean, not that we have any say in it per se,
Well, you do.
but we could recommend, just on a simple voice vote,
I
that,
think the master plan committee recommends to restrict it.
okay, there you go. The master plan committee just decided. I would rather not wait until it happens. I'd rather, if the town is agreeable, I would rather the borough restrict the load limit. And you don't have to go to like 5 tons, because, that basically covers a heavy loaded pickup truck for the most part.
That's, what you're talking about is really not planning or zoning, that's more of just the general police power.
Right.
What you can do on roads, so that wouldn't even be in the master plan. I understand it, and I kind of probably agree with you, but that's not really a planning issue.
Right.
That's more of a police power, general police power issue.
So they have the ability to change the weight limit on the road?
By ordinance.
Okay,
By ordinance.
By ordinance.
okay.
Yeah, and the borough would have to do the ordinance, and they'd have to get input from the police
We're already
department.
in discussion about it, yes. I just want to bring it to everybody's attention, because, like you said, those signs are up, and there's a lot of noise on that end of the town, and in Oakland, how one's going to go there.
And I would just say that let's not wait until they get to that.
Because once they get a permit to put it in, it's gonna be harder for us
Yeah.
to justify making the change.
And it also has to do with condition of the road. I mean, I don't know what the construction of the road is between here and Oakland, as far as, the county roads are built to a different level of construction usually. So, I don't know, we just paved that road. I don't know if it would hold up to a substantial truck traffic load like Broad Street does.
Yeah, probably.
So, any update on the road between Wanacue and the quarry?
Yeah, they've, as you can see, Riverdale, they moved out of the quarry over there. Again, the only thing operating in Pompton is going to be a cement truck plant off of Broad Street, but a lot less truck traffic. It's already started, there's a lot less trucks going in and out of there now. The road is pretty much complete into Wanacue, and they're using that right now. I don't know what's gonna happen to the property in Riverdale, there's a lot of rumors, but it's a big piece of property.
But they're still gonna do the asphalt in
Yes,
Hunter,
the
right?
asphalt,
All right, and they're just gonna go out that back.
No, the asphalt is gonna be done from inside the Tilcon area, but go through the back road.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't go through the
Okay,
lot.
all right.
So that's why we'll lose all the trucks, except for the cement trucks that come in, just for the cement.
So really, concrete trucks are still gonna come this way?
A couple, but not, it's mostly asphalt trucks that are going in. Yeah, they're not closing that plant down completely.
But that has to go out our way? That can't go out to Wanacue?
It's just a waiting station of some sort.
Okay, it's still an improvement, but, so that's on progress to get done soon?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much done. I think they're using it. I actually think they're close to using it. There's some bigger project being built in Bloomingdale right now, some redevelopment projects, another phase to Avalon Bay there. And that's right where the road is, so I think they're coordinating with what's going on over there.
Yeah, Bloomingdale has a huge project area that they want to develop.
Yeah, it's a big area.
And again, that's on a county road on Union Avenue. So as long as they don't have an access directly to the middle of our town, I don't care.
And then you have the whole old quarry in Riverdale, that's a big problem too.
Yeah, what are they gonna do over there, have you heard?
There's a lot of rumors, I don't know.
Interesting to see what goes there.
Yeah, Riverdale Quarry is gonna be interesting because there's a lot of land in there.
It's big.
All right, anyone else on the board have any comments or questions in general? Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who's the second?
Mr. Trophy. Someone down there.
Someone over there.
One of those guys down there.
Someone down there.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mary Marie.